I'm sure that by now many of you have heard about FEI's most recent controversy, that being the potential change to the blood rule. Something that I personally believe is not only a complete step backwards for equine welfare in sport, but is also a just blatant disregard for equine welfare as a whole, and a big flashing sign that says money matters more than horses. So in November, FEI will be voting on a potential rule change that they are expected to pass that has pretty much the entire horse welfare community up in arms, and rightfully so. This rule change would downgrade visible bleeding on the horse from tack or equipment or the horse itself from an elimination offense to a recorded warning. Surprisingly, the original proposed rule change was actually less severe than the one that they will be voting on. I will link the PDF in the description if you want to look at it, but it has all of the proposed rule changes for right now, including this one, and I'll list the page numbers as well so that you can find it easily. But basically, it will start with what the original proposed rule change is, and then FEI and other organizations give feedback on it, and then they adjust the rule change, and then it's like, okay, here's the new wording. It's like, let's edit that a little bit. You can read through the whole thing. The original proposition from the Irish National Equestrian Federation, which I believe is called Horse Sport Ireland, was that if officials consider blood on the horse to be minor and the result of natural causes, like if the horse were to bite their own tongue or their lip, the officials could authorize the rinsing or wiping of the blood and allow the horse to compete, but would receive a jumping recorded warning. But if the blood persists or officials have concerns about the welfare of the horse can be eliminated from the competition. And if the same rider receives 2 or more of these jumping recorded warnings within 12 months, they will receive a fine and be suspended for a month. But FEI amended this wording and removed the term minor blood simply because minor is too hard to define and it would be too subjective. So they are making absolutely no distinction between blood that the average person would consider minor and what the average person would consider major. They're making no distinction between, like an insect bite or a minor scrape and blood actively pouring out of the nose. So with the new rule that they're expected to pass, any blood on the horse caused by tack or equipment or any athlete-induced blood detected during competition will result in the following consequences. First offense, jumping recorded warning. Second offense, jumping recorded warning. And if the same person responsible receives 2 or more jumping recorded warnings within 12 months, they'll receive a minor fine and be suspended for a month. In other cases where the blood is detected on the horse, like if they've bitten their tongue or their lip or they're bleeding from the nose, officials can authorize the cleaning of the blood and allow the horse to continue the competition so long as a veterinary delegate has deemed the horse to be fit to compete. I feel like I'm not physically capable of rolling my eyes hard enough to express how I feel about this. The reasoning behind this proposed rule change is kind of weird to me. The reason is, 1, the horse's flank is not where the spur would usually be. 2, we have had instances where horses have been cut by hitting wings of fences, flags, etc., which has nothing to do with the ride. The reason I find this weird is, 1, what does where the spur would usually be have to do with anything? Regardless of where the spur usually is or where it currently is, you have the capability of causing harm with it if you're using it incorrectly, so I don't get that. And number 2, I actually really don't care what has caused the horse to bleed. If the horse is bleeding, they shouldn't be competing. Regardless of if it was the rider's fault or the tack's fault or not, regardless of if it was an accident in the middle of the ride. If you're in the middle of the ride and your horse gets caught on something and they start bleeding, in my opinion, you should be stopping your ride and you should be getting your horse checked out. I believe that the horse should always come first. And even if, you get off and you look over the wound and you realize, oh my God, this is tiny, this is fine, I think you should be getting off to check. And if the objects in the show ring are regularly causing injuries like this, then maybe we need to be reevaluating what is in the show ring. Maybe we need to be reevaluating the materials that are used. To me, this rationale demonstrates very clear priorities that are not in the best interest of the horse. If your horse is actively bleeding and your first thought is, it's not fair for me to be eliminated, I should be allowed to compete, this isn't my fault, and not, oh my god, my horse is bleeding, why are they bleeding, what caused this, what can I do, where's the nearest vet? You have a very clear priority, and it's not the welfare of your horse. And in my opinion, if your priority is competition and not the welfare of the horse, then you shouldn't be riding horses. And you know what? It would be one thing if it was like a tiny little scab that, like a little scab on their side that fell off and was causing like a couple drops of blood. That would be that would be one thing. Or if like it was an insect bite, that would be something that is like, it's not going to affect your horse's ability to compete pain-free unless it happens to be like under the girth or like under the saddle or something. But blood coming out of the nose or the mouth or from excessive spurring is a very different story. I think that there could be a case for a recorded warning for actual minor blood, like something from a small scab falling off or an insect bite, but then FEI needs to put in the work to actually determine and define what qualifies as minor blood, and they need to be able to enforce that. Because the reality is, I could understand that, minor is subjective, right? It can be hard to define, and already we have some vets at these shows who don't really follow the rules that we already have in place. So I could understand that trying to make the distinction between minor and major is difficult, and it could be, enforced unfairly. But if we can't make that distinction, then we have to have a rule that disqualifies all competitors that are exhibiting blood, that are bleeding. Because otherwise, you have someone who their horse could have a gash, they could be bleeding, like excessively, or they could have blood pouring out of their nose and they'd be allowed to compete. And I think that that's disgusting. And so if we can't make the distinction between minor and major, then we have to eliminate for all of it. I find Article 259.2, which covers blood coming out of the nose or the mouth, especially troubling. Because blood from the mouth and the nose, those are probably two of the more common sites in which we see bleeding in high-level show horses because of the bits and nosebands that are commonly used at these levels. And removing the possibility of elimination for these types of offenses seriously lowers the stakes for riders who are using harmful equipment. If the welfare of their horse is not incentive enough, then they have absolutely no incentive to use kinder bits or kinder nosebands or kinder training. To allow a horse with nasal or oral bleeding to continue competing, like that day, as they are literally bleeding, is to completely disregard the horse's welfare and completely disregard what the likely cause of that injury is. In competitive settings, one of the most common causes of injuries like these are the bits and the nosebands being used, because in high levels of equestrian sport, you will see very nasty bits and very nasty nosebands being used. The nosebands are strapped down so tight. Some people use drop nosebands, which I personally think just shouldn't exist, because why would you put a noseband somewhere on the horse's face that is so likely to break the nose bone? And they often use bits that are just unnecessary and can cause a lot of damage regardless of if the hands that are holding them are light or heavy, because a lot of people will say that, a bit is only as harsh as the hands that are holding it. And that's literally just untrue. Will a bit cause more damage if it's in the hands of someone with heavy hands? Yes, of course. But some bits are inherently harsher than others, and some bits are inherently painful. There are bits out there that the way that they just do cause pain. One of the reasons why it is so common to see these more harsh bits and nosebands and just bridle systems being used at high levels is because they do provide typically more control, like more physical control over the horse's movements. And for some riders, that has become necessary for them to compete up to the same level as they have been because of the way that show jumping and, other equestrian sports have just drastically changed in the past 5 to 10 years. Show jumping in particular as a sport has become significantly more complicated and technical in the past 10 years, I would say. And as the courses get more and more difficult, riders search for new ways to be able to achieve the same amount of control and to compete up to the same level. This is part of what has led most of these riders to switch to more harsh bits and to more problematic nosebands and bridles, because it provides more physical control and it allows them to not only compete at that level but excel and win at that level. But these bits paired with these tight nosebands can cause a lot of damage to the oral cavity as well as to the inside of the nose, which is why we see more of these professional level horses who have blood coming out of their nose or their mouth while they're competing. To continue to ride and compete on a horse that has oral tissue damage while you are riding with a bit is not only mind-boggling to anyone that cares about animals, but it is a serious harm to the horse's welfare, and it also seriously jeopardizes the ability for equestrian sport to continue in the way that it has been. If the rest of the world finds out that there is a rule that allows horses to be competed when they are bleeding from the mouth with a metal bar in their mouth, they are going to start to come for equestrian sports and fight against their continuation. And honestly, I wouldn't blame them. There is a reason why I cannot watch professional level riding for more than 5 minutes. It is astonishing what kinds of things are allowed to occur in professional level riding these days. I don't think I have personally seen a horse in professional level show jumping or dressage in the past 5 years that wasn't actively displaying either pain face, conflict behaviors, or just overall signs of distress. In top-level professional riding, the welfare of the horse is more commonly compromised than it is prioritized. Extremist animal rights groups like PETA have been gunning for equestrian activities and sports for years. We do not need to give them more fuel. What FEI is demonstrating by even considering this rule change is that the riders, the money, and the competition matter more than the health and well-being of the horses. And I think that that is sad, disappointing, harmful, and heartbreaking. This change to the blood rule hasn't been approved yet, which means that we still have a chance to do something. Write to the FEI and your National Equestrian Federation and tell them that you are against the change to the blood rule. Tell them all of your concerns. Or you can even just say something as simple as, I am strongly against the change to the blood rule. I think it is seriously harmful to horse welfare. You can even say something as simple as that, because really, all that FEI and the National Equestrian Federations need to know is that we are against this. This issue will not stay isolated to jumping alone. All it takes is one rule change in one discipline for all of them to start falling backwards. Because the reality is that if you don't care about horse welfare and you don't prioritize it, competition is easier. It's easier that way. If you don't care about whether or not the horses are in pain or scared or uncomfortable, it's easier to do whatever you would ideally want to do. If you're not worried about the tack or equipment harming the horse, then you use whatever will give you more control. If you're not worried about the jumps or the objects in the show ring harming the horses, then you put out whatever looks flashy and exciting and captivating and whatever is going to make the course more dangerous, because what makes it more dangerous makes it more exciting. Like, look at the cross-country jumps we have today. I am seriously shocked that the FEI thinks that an administrative warning is sufficient. Warnings have never stopped professional riders from doing bad things before. Even leaked video footage, public outcry, and the entire internet turning against them has never really stopped them before. They just serve out their suspensions and they get right back to training and competing the same way they were before. It's sad, but the reality is that riders have to have serious consequences for offenses like this, or nothing in this sport or this industry will ever change. The whole purpose of the FEI is to oversee competitive equestrian sports and to enforce the rules that are put into place to ensure the welfare of the horses competing. And that is a responsibility that I think that they have been slacking on for years now. I personally lost respect for FEI a long time ago. I'm not saying that they've never done anything good, but I'm saying that in the past 5 years especially, I have seen them turn the other way too many times when horses were in distress. I have seen them prioritize the rich riders over the welfare of the horses, and I think that that goes completely against what they themselves say is their priority. They say that the welfare of the horse is their priority, and their actions are not backing that up. I am incredibly disappointed in what I am seeing in this industry and in these equestrian sports. A rule change like this is a complete step backwards for equine welfare in sport. It will not only allow riders to continue to do harmful things that put their horses at risk, but it will also jeopardize this industry's already fragile social license to operate. If horses are bleeding, they shouldn't be competing. Alright guys, I think this video was way longer than I meant it to be because I went way off script and said way too much. Actually, you know what? No, I didn't say too much. I think I said just the right amount. I think I could have said more if I wanted to because I'm outraged. I'm outraged. I'm mad. I am angry. These are synonyms. I'm aware, but the more words I say, the more I can get my point across. A rule change like this is just so crazy to me, the fact that this is something that's being considered. But like even the fact that like the original proposed rule change, while I also don't agree with it, I would have been maybe 50% as mad if that is what was being voted on. But the fact that they were like,
yeah, no, minor blood is too hard for us to define, so we're just gonna take that term out and just say blood. Blood.
Well, I meant to get this video, I was hoping to get this video out days ago because they are voting on it in November. I don't know the exact date, and like it is literally the end of October now. It's a few days away from Halloween, but I got sidetracked by my animals having some concerning medical issues. Until I see you in the next one, please remember, if the horse is bleeding, they shouldn't be competing, and remember to think critically.